voice. And so I began to characterize the inner voice as the most important coach you will ever have in your life. And it's a coach that knows you better than anyone because you've lived inside your body in a way no one else has. So there are a lot of good coaches and they're going to know a lot of insights about you, but no one will know you as well as you do. And if you're going to have a coach that is able to say the right thing at the right time and to actually give you the greatest advice, just like all the other coaches needed to be trained. Just an off-the-cuff coach who's got no training is probably going to make a lot of mistakes. So we need to have a trained inner voice.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. And whether you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you are in the right place. My guest this episode is the co-founder of the Human Performance Institute, a world-renowned performance psychologist and author of 18 books, including his most recent, Wise Decision, a science-based approach to making better choices. He also co-authored the national bestseller, The Power of Full Engagement. His groundbreaking, science-based energy management training system, known as Corporate Athlete Training, has achieved worldwide recognition and has been chronicled in leading national publications, including the Harvard Business Review, Business Week, Fortune, Newsweek, Time, U.S. News and World Report, Success, Fast Company, and Omni. He's appeared on NBC's Today Show, ABC's Nightline, CBS Evening News, CBS Morning News, and the Oprah Winfrey Show. With over 35 years of experience in applied research, he believes the single most important factor in successful achievement, personal fulfillment, and life satisfaction is the strength of one's character. Please welcome to the Elev8 Podcast, Dr. Jim Loehr. Dr. Jim, how are you today?
I'm good, TJ. I'm excited to be with you and hope we can create some excitement for your listeners.
Yeah, definitely excited to have you on. Got the pleasure to see you speak with Brett and What Drives Winning in the summer and meet you and glad to have you on the podcast. And I guess kind of getting right into some of your work. One of the things on your website is a quote that says, "The muscles of character can be built the same way we build physical muscles with intentional energy investment." Can you talk about that and why character is such an important factor?
It's such an interesting journey that I've been on. As a psychologist, my doctorate and master's were in community mental health to help, people struggling with mental health issues. And I became chief psychologist and executive director of a very large community mental health center that served the whole central and southern part of Colorado. And I figured that's what I would do for the rest of my life. And I got involved with an exercise physiologist by the name of Dr. Joe Vigil. And he started challenging me. He's a track and field legend, started really challenging me to think about the application of psychology to human performance. And I've always been an athlete. I love sport. And I thought, boy, that really doesn't exist. But I'd love to put my feet in that field and see if I might be able to do something that would be a real contribution to an area that hasn't really gotten very well defined. So I spent my life, trying to help athletes. And this notion of character never came up in any academic work that I've ever done. It was always kind of in the germane or the domain of really philosophers and theologians. But we had this institute that I formed with Dr. Jack Groppel in 1991. It's called the Human Performance Institute. And I'm a data guy. I love to collect mountains of data. And we had some 350,000, and by the time it was sold to Johnson & Johnson, by the time Johnson & Johnson and I left about 6 years after the sale to help them with the transition, we probably had over 400,000 people go through. That's a great database. And what kept coming up was something that I was completely surprised by. And that was that in terms of helping people, they would come to the Human Performance Institute to win more, to try to find a way to get to the next level of performance,
Mm.
to find out how much talent and skill they really have, and how do you push the envelope. And so we did that with 17 number ones in the world in sport, and then special forces, and all kinds of everything from chess champions to sumo wrestlers from Japan, and then thousands of what we call corporate athletes. And what kept coming to the surface in our data collection was that sustained performance is the result of extraordinary character.
Mm.
And character, we looked at character in two ways. One was what we call a performance character, help you perform better. That's what coaches are always talking about, focus and attitude and resilience and on and on. But the one that actually surfaced most was what we refer to as moral and ethical character,
Mm.
which was really, really something that really related to your treatment of others on this path that you're on to become extraordinary. And you can get to the top by treating people badly, by walking over dead bodies to get to the top. And we saw that in a fair number of cases. But sustained happiness and sustained performance were really connected to your ability to deal with people in a way that you want to be treated. It's like, how would you like to be treated in that situation? Kind of the golden rule. And this came as a total surprise to me. I mean, how did Jim Loehr, who have written all these books on mental toughness and everything else, get into the character space? And one of the things that we developed was this notion, and this came also from the model we were creating, and that is around energy management. And we really came to understand, which was a huge insight, that we give life to whatever we give our energy to, for better or worse.
Mm.
So all of our clients were very keen on making sure that wherever their energy went, it was aligned with where they wanted to go. And we did that same application to character. And we viewed character as a muscle, very much like a bicep or a tricep. And if you want to have an extraordinary bicep, you're going to have to go in and, push that bicep with energy investment by lifting weights well beyond what your normal routines are. And so if you want to have an extraordinary muscle of honesty or integrity or kindness or gratitude or any of either of the performance or moral and ethical character strengths, assets, you're going to have to find ways to invest energy in them way above and beyond what you're currently doing. And so the biggest takeaway we had, which was, again, a huge surprise to me, was that we were in the health business, that health ignites performance. And all we were doing, we finally realized that all we were doing to get people to go to the edges of human performance was to get them healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And spiritually was the character dimension. And that's where we started, was to try to get people, because we found that fulfillment and happiness is somehow connected to the way you treat others on the way to the top. There's something built in, I call it the hidden scorecard, that for you to feel good about yourself, we are social creatures, first and foremost. And if you don't treat your own kind in a way that actually resonates deep in your soul, you never feel quite right about what you've achieved.
Yeah. Yeah, just soaking all that in. You talked about the working with, the number ones in the world and elite forces, and I loved hearing you talk about the sumo wrestlers earlier in the summer. What is something that you learned about you in working with those high performers?
I learned that I really don't know very much. I mean, I love to have data lead me. And when I got into the arena of, sports psychology and performance psychology, I realized I didn't know anything. I mean, there was no field. I couldn't go and study. I knew a lot about how to help people who were struggling with mental health issues
Yeah.
get a little better. But I didn't know anything about helping people who are pretty normal becoming extraordinary and do things that are way beyond the normal kind of uh, really achievement that people might expect in their life. And so I had to do a lot of learning. And I let the data that I was involved in and that we were involved in kind of lead me. So I went to the Jimmy Connors United States Tennis Center. I felt he was the best competitor at that time. Spent 2 years there. And then where I learned almost everything was at the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy, where there were like 240 of the best players in the world. And I set uh, really my institute there, the Institute for Sports Science and Sports Psychology there. And we had Andre Agassi and Jim Courier and David Wheaton and Monica Seles and Martin Blackman and on and on and on. And I had them wired up every day to some kind of telemetry and trying to understand how their physiology worked, how their thoughts and everything and what they said to themselves, their inner voice made that public. And that was worth for me a couple PhDs. And after all of that, I felt like maybe I could start a business that was built on all the data I collected there. And my partner was Dr. Jack Roppel, who had his PhD in bioengineering. He also was a data guy. And so we launched the Human Performance Institute, and it was probably the most fun thing I could have done in my career. I feel so grateful. But the biggest takeaway is I got to learn. I mean, the older I get, the more I realize I don't know very much.
I gotta be honest. I sit here and hear you say I don't know very much. And for years, some of the greatest, and the athletes sought you out. So you had to have known, or at least some things. But I think you touch on, I think that is something that at least I found very important in the sports psychology space and in interviewing so many people, is that you kind of do this together.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I think been part of my journey and learning from other legends like yourself. Um, and sometimes it's taken, this world and this world. And until you figure out where you want to go with each other and what things we've got, it feels like sometimes you're constantly learning. Even as soon as you think you know something, you learned you don't really know it.
It's so interesting. Every person that I work with becomes an opportunity for me to learn more. And they learn hopefully a lot from me, but I deepen my understanding of this complex system that generates some kind of human performance. And I'm interested in the physiology, I'm interested in the neurochemistry, I'm interested in every dimension of science that might help me or the team I'm working with do a better job. And I really feel like if you understand something pretty well, you should be able to explain it fairly simply. When I listen to people explain things to a general audience that is so complicated and no one can really comprehend it, no one walks away with any real understanding. For me, it's simplicity. I'm always looking for what is the one sentence or two sentences that actually is like this notion of, energy spawns growth. That took years of data collection, try to understand what is it? Well, we are reservoirs of potential energy, and we want to convert it to something, maybe kinetic energy in some way and make a difference. And, we're like a gardener. You can decide what you want to grow. If you have the energy and you understand, you're going to get back what you invest your energy in. You invest in an extraordinary marriage and you've defined what that is. Someone who's really kind and loyal and really devoted and, all the things, grateful and all that stuff. You've got to invest in that. It's not going to just happen because you want it. And so energy is the substrate that makes everything happen in our lives or doesn't happen. And our brains are constantly trying to figure out what it is you want. It only exists for one basic reason: to help you survive, to get you what you want and need. So be careful what you tell it. And so we're very keen. I've become very, very acutely interested in what are you saying to yourself? What is this private voice articulating to this central command center in the space between your ears? Because it's always listening and it gets confused. What do you want? You say you're a bonehead, you're stupid, you have no forehand, you can't hit a drive in golf, you always choke. And I go, well, it seems like you might be getting back everything you're communicating to yourself. And so we spend a lot of time really tailoring what that private voice is communicating to that really command center that is really the power broker in everyone's life. And so, and I'm always interested in what are the latest findings in neuroscience and how does it connect to the way we've been working. So I'm a constant learner, and that's my favorite thing to do. That's why I love that we had this laboratory, race car teams, race car drivers, entire hockey teams. And every one of those was like an adventure for me.
Yeah.
I could get in and learn from them. They were there to learn from us. But for me, this was another opportunity to try to peel back the skin of this Rubik cube of humanity and try to figure out how do we get more out of what we've got as human beings and do it safely.
Yeah.
And if we undermine health, it's not just giving 100% and then just, hoping that that's the energy is not infinite. We got to take a break. We've got to figure out how to get it's called periodization in sport, but there's so many lessons that have to be learned. A lot of great coaches have figured it out, but they even have a hard time articulating it. The military's figured out a lot of it, but they didn't get the recovery side very well engineered. So we did a lot of work with the special forces and so forth. And how do we build in micro moments of recovery in a stress cycle that is maybe unimaginable? So I'm very lucky to have had all these opportunities. I've had some great teachers. All these number ones in the world, they were about the best teachers I could have.
Yeah. You said it a few different times about kind of that inner voice. And I think a lot of listeners to this podcast are kind of in that student athlete range of high school into college. And they're grappling with that a lot of times. Sometimes, I think they're trying to figure that out. And we've got so many thoughts a day running through our brain, and a lot of them are negative and repetitive. What are some ways that we can help create greater awareness in our athletes of that voice and how to grab the reins a bit?
So in the sports psychology world, it's called self-talk. And, they showed pretty much the research as a whole supported the idea of constructive, positive self-talk. But the work that I did pushed that to much further extremes. We all have a public voice, which is what I'm speaking to you with, and you have a public voice. And then we have this voice that no one hears but us. I mean, that it's only that Jim hears or the TJ hears. And I was always interested, athletes would tell me, if we put remote microphones on them when they were competing and asked them to put into public voice what they were saying to themselves privately. And, the stuff that was going on was unbelievable. You are such an idiot. How could you be that stupid? I mean, you are literally, one of the dumbest people. I hate you. I hate your at voluntaries, I hate my forehand, I can't serve, I have no second serve, on and on and on. So I would bring them in and sit them down and say, this is the coaching you gave yourself to help you get through these tough moments. And I would pull it all in. And it was the most incredibly horrific, monologue that they would be, spewing forth. And it was a shock to them that this is what you want to be world class, and this is the kind of advice. And so I began to characterize the inner voice as the most important coach you will ever have in your life. And it's a coach that knows you better than anyone because you've lived inside your body in a way no one else has. So there are a lot of good coaches, and they're going to know a lot of insights about you, but no one will know you as well as you do. And if you're going to have a coach that is able to say the right thing at the right time and to actually give you the greatest advice, just like all the other coaches needed to be trained. Just an off-the-cuff coach who's got no training is probably going to make a lot of mistakes. So we need to have a trained inner voice. I call that inner voice 2, as opposed to inner voice 1, which is just kind of out there and whatever comes up just blasts away. And so the whole idea is to train that inner voice to be the best possible coach you can ever have. And when we started doing that, we found the best way to train that inner voice is with your hand in writing, cursive writing. And to keep a journal, and that journal is all about not complaining and whining and talking about all the crappy things that are going on. It's you coaching you so that this will be the voice that comes forth when you're in that situation again. You're always working in advance, trying to figure out when I get nervous, when I start to choke, when I want to kill somebody, when I start feeling horrific. And so they begin to, every single day, they journal, and then they would read the journal to themselves, and they would read it to me, and we would talk about it. And then we would see how that affected their ability to perform compared to what was going on before. And for me, it's probably the most miraculous discovery, because I began to realize that your inner voice is closest to the center of Command Central. It's inside your head. It's not coming, it doesn't have to go anywhere. It's right there. And the more that voice is aligned with what you truly want, the greater the likelihood is that this will be processed in a way that is going to get you closer as opposed to further away. And so if you're having a lot of problems managing, negative emotion, nerves, negative thinking, what happens is all of a sudden you start emerging as maybe the brightest coach you've ever had in your life. And a lot of the great coaches, what they're trying to get to you, they're trying to get to your inner voice. Because your inner voice and your public voice can be miles apart. If somebody that you don't really like is speaking, you just shut them out. You don't even listen to it. It's like it just goes through.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a jerk. Shut up. So you don't allow them access. So what we're trying to do is make sure that you understand once someone gets in your head, they have the potential for influence, and everyone wants in there. Your parents want in there, your coach wants in there, your used car salesman wants in there, all the advertisers on television, because that means potential influence. So you got to be a good gatekeeper. You got to know who to let in and who not to let in. Maybe a lot of your peers are people that are not in your best interest as far as going where you want to go. So we get very, very careful about how do we become great gatekeepers and who should be given unlimited access to that. And the most important thing we would say after a performance, there are a lot of things you can't control. You can control your effort, which is your energy investment. I want the best you can give. I want the best attitude that you can give. Those two, and then I want the best inner voice coaching that you could possibly give. And what the ultimate standard is is everything that you were saying to yourself were projected onto a jumbotron so that everyone could see how you were coaching yourself, you would be proud. You would not want to take anything away. And if you get A's on all three of those, we're going to move in a great direction.
I really like that. I like the having your thoughts on that jumbotron image there, replaying. I know I wouldn't want some of my past thoughts when I was an athlete flashing up there.
This will be possible. We'll be able to tell what you're actually saying with your inner voice and have it projected on a computer screen.
Yeah. When you talk about having the athletes, do this journaling exercise and during this time, how much time would you say some of these top athletes were spending investing their energy on these things with you and some of that process comparative to the physical training they were doing?
So I like to think of the brain as a muscle that you have to work, just like all the other muscles of your body. If you don't work them and they're a little bit off course, then you're going to have to train it harder. It's got bad habits. If you got bad habits on a forehand or on a high jump, or you're going to have to get it figured. And the brain, there are motor neurons, and then you have all these neurons between your ears, all this gray matter. We need to get all of that lined up correctly. And that is precision. Precision is what you have to have in all dimensions. And so the amount of time it takes to get your brain to go more efficiently and effectively is based on what kind of brain you got. If you're very sensitive, if you don't have a lot of self-confidence, you're very negative, cynical, sarcastic, if you're very arrogant, you have no humility, there's just a lot of barriers that really get in the way of a lot of this stuff. So, but what I say is if you want to go if you want to get as far as you possibly can go, you're going to have to work the full spectrum of who you are as a person, even your character. And so we do a lot of character journaling as well. But they're recommended. And in the beginning, people, if they've never journaled, they don't like to journal. Seems like it's wishy-washy. It's like, oh, I want the real stuff. What do I do? I don't want to sit down and write some crap. I want to know, what do I got to do? I need a technique. And I go, well, here's your technique. Write with your hand. And he goes, that's it? And I go, well, I'll be able to tell you how much progress we're making when I read your bloody notes or when you read them to me. So after a while, and they start seeing the results, let's say they journal for 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day. They have a journal and they date it and they put the amount of time that they spent journaling. So we know how much time you've actually done in mental training. And then we total that up for a week. Someone like Dan Jansen, I had 23 variables, and every single week he had to fill out fill out all those parameters. And I mean, I knew what he was doing, and we covered the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And it's just an integrated system. You can't just come in and fix one end and hope it all going to work. So even as a performance psychologist, I need to work with coaches, the physical, the trainers, the physiologists, everyone. So I know what's going on in terms of the total person. And but from my side, there's very few things that work as well as journaling. And you got to have this ability to kind of open your mind, your awareness to what's going on inside your body, and to become more aware. When you get tight, are you excited or are you tight? Are you angry? Or is this just really, how do you get to positive intensity? And what's too much intensity? And how do you regulate this remarkable neurochemistry and these stress hormones, cortisol, and so forth? How do you get a handle on that? Well, I can tell you, your inner voice will help you with that. Settle down, take a deep breath. If it's a tennis player, walk. between points, and you've got 25, 20 seconds to kind of get yourself together, put a little smile on your face, and come back and let's get it going. As opposed to, oh, here we go, we're choking again. I hate myself when I do this. I can't do anything when I choke. This damn journaling isn't working.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing you have to fight. But I've had a lot of success, and even if we don't have the success, it's a great learning opportunity for me because not everyone is wired the same.
Yeah. It's my dream that they would have an ungraded English class in high schools for journaling. That kids would learn that skill.
Oh my
And
goodness, if they had that going.
oh, I mean, I see these high schools and I'm like, man, we could, I don't know. I feel like when we start to learn all these things about how we're supposed to write and all this, it limits to even letting that out when you sometimes experience it with young athletes that they're so wired to judgment on their writing from a scholastic perspective that they're not able to put that aside to just let loose and really feel with a pen.
100%. And the journaling that we're talking about here is a specific kind of journaling. There's other types. One is a cathartic journal. You just puke it all out on paper and then tear it up. You can just get it out if you need to get it out. But we found that even, here's the kind of template that I use. If let's say you're an athlete and you're in the middle of a mess and you're not doing well, angry, frustrated, all kinds of things. And what should you be saying to yourself? And they go, I don't have any idea. I don't know what the hell, I'm lost. And I say, okay, your best friend is in exactly this situation and he needs your coaching. What would you say to your best friend? Would you say, you're choking. You're such a joke. I don't know what the hell's the matter with you. You're an embarrassment. I don't even want to be around you. Or would they say, hey, you're human, man. Settle down. Take a deep breath. Let's go back to what's really, what works for you. Let's try to ignite a little bit of positivity here. Let's get some good energy. Let's just focus on what's happening in the moment. And you give them that advice. And where does that advice come from? You. Who knows you better than anyone?
Yeah.
But try to put it through the prism of you speaking to someone you deeply care about, your best friend, who was in the same situation you're currently in, and all of a sudden you clean up your act magnificently.
Yeah. You made me definitely think of Brett's work there, right? Question, lead, how do we lead to some of our own, it's in there, but I think that's what some of this work and great coaching does is, as you've seen, is it doesn't come from the external, it does come from within. But we need sometimes help as regular people and high performers on discovering the power that's in there. You talk a lot about, the energy, and I remember interviewing Molly Fletcher, who is like the female Jerry Maguire in sports, and she wrote a book that I really liked called The Energy Clock.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I feel like young student athletes, this idea of you need better time management, manage your schedule, manage your time. And guys, kids can't manage your time when we really should be talking about look at the demands that are on them on a daily and weekly basis. Let's manage our energy instead of a clock.
Yeah, Molly went through our whole program. So
that's the genesis of that, right?
She understood. She got exactly the whole dynamic of energy. And, when I started, time management was a very big issue. That was really dumb. It was $1 billion industry. All these time management planners and the Covey and Franklin planners and all that stuff. And we actually had Covey, Junior, MR Covey on our board. And I began to, I'm always kind of a contrarian to it because I look at things, I don't just accept the way things are, the way they typically flow out. And it struck me that there is a massive disconnect in the time management system. And I've said this to Stephen M.R. multiple times, and he really didn't have it. Even Stephen Covey, I presented it to him, and he had no answer. And I said, the time management system rests on a very faulty, flawed premise. And he says, there's no way. We've been around too long. I mean, it's $1 billion industry. I mean, you might be smart, Jim, but you're not that smart. And I said, okay, well, let me just, not that I'm smart, but here's what I think. I'm going to give you the thesis of what time management really rests on. It's the prime thesis of the whole movement. And he says, okay. And so I go, if you want to truly have success in life, true success, what you must first of all do is to define what matters to you. You have to look at your values. You have to look who and what you care most about in life. And then you have to courageously begin to carve out time and invest time in all those people and causes and things you care about. And in that courageous investment, you will have the success you want. And I go, and I said, how close am I? He says, yeah, that's pretty good. And I said, that is 100% unequivocally false. He says, what are you talking about? And I said, well, first of all, the investment of time does nothing. Time has no power, has no valence. It's simply a moment. And you can invest, let's say your goal in being home with your family is to show them how much you care about them. And you've devoted 4 hours to be with your family. And it was a tough, very courageous, move. And so you show up, but when we look at what happened with your energy was in TV, you were angry, you were a little bit kind of disengaged, you were not that. And in fact, when we looked at what you were actually investing in, it was diametrically opposed. Even though your time management was perfect, follow your energy, not your time. And I said, so you can get a reverse return on the mission in terms of the time you invested if you don't align the energy with the time and the time with the mission. And I said, the biggest missing element in time management is they fail to acknowledge that it is energy that makes time value. It's the intersection of energy with time that creates value. So Stephen then went back and they developed this thing called quality time. And I said, Stephen, time does not have quality. Energy has quantity, has quality, has focus and intensity, like all energy in the universe. And so, for me, and I think Molly got that in spades. She really understood. It was like a huge breakthrough for her. And it is for a lot of people because it's not how much time you spend in the gym. If you want to have extraordinary biceps, you can spend hours and hours in the gym and walk out and have no impact on your biceps at all. You're going to have to invest specifically energy in the bicep. The quantity, quality, focus, and intensity of that energy will determine the return you get on the growth of that bicep. And so it is with life. Follow your energy, whatever you've invested your energy in, mostly. If you got a lot of negativity, cynicism, sarcasm, anger, joy, happiness, gratitude, follow your energy. That's what you're getting back. So for whatever time you have left on earth, make sure your energy investments align with what you really want.
Love that. When you think about investing or energy and you see kind of the sports landscape out there, why do you find or believe that what seems sometimes that it's not the greater percentage of coaches leaning into kind of the leadership character to drive their programs? Why are coaches sometimes hesitant to understand some of these real performance things that we know?
There's a coach, his name is Brett Ledbetter. I don't know if you know Brett, have you ever heard of Brett?
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time with Brett, and he's got he's like my growth in this area. He realizes that when he's looked at the truly successful coaches and those that are most fulfilled and happy, it's not, I mean, it's great to have all the national championships, but what you're really hoping to do, most people go into coaching because they want to change people's lives for the better, make them better, more. If you knew that what you've done is made a lot of young men or women more skillful cheaters. They don't really care about anyone but themselves. A lot of egomaniacs. They're chasing trophies and fame, and they're willing to, kind of fudge to get where they want and to walk over dead bodies to get there. And that's the legacy you left in their lives. You're probably not going to be a very happy guy or woman in the end. Most people go into coaching because they believe they can make a positive difference in someone's life. They're better human beings as a consequence. So Brett Ledbetter and many other coaches, Billy Donovan, I've spent a lot of time with Billy, current coach of the Chicago Bulls. And, what we've learned about is the more you care about your players as persons, the more they're going to care about the game and to try to make this team a success. When you care about someone, you're not just concerned about their ability to, sink the free throw at a critical time. You're really interested in how are they metabolizing all the demands of the sport, and you want to help them. If they never become a superstar, you want whatever you've given them, you want to help them become more successful as human beings for the rest of their life. And the most important asset human beings have, bar none, I've learned, and it took a long time to get there, was their moral and ethical character, their kindness, their gratitude or gratefulness for what they've been given, their honesty, their integrity as a human being, their humility as opposed to their arrogance. And there's a whole bunch of them. I wrote several books about this. The only way to win is to win with character. The only way to lose is to lose with character. And then I wrote the book with Karen Kenny, Leading with Character, which is in a more of the corporate space. But the whole idea that, and I wrote a book with Sheila Walker Olson, who's a brilliant behavioral geneticist called Wise Decisions. And it's all about, we all need to have some vetting system for how we make decisions. And we need to have our own kind of personal credo that really identifies what matters most to us. And a big factor, if I really get to the end game of what I really want to be on this planet in terms of my legacy, it's what I call the tombstone legacy. What do you want on your tombstone? It's not, I won 12 national championships, I had 3 gold medals. What you're going to put up there is probably something like was an extraordinary mother or father or an extraordinary inspiration to other people. His or her kindness was something they gave their life. It was what you begin to realize that your life is not about you. It never was. It's about what you can do for others. And once you get that, everything changes. And so it's like, coaches who get that, it takes quite a while. You have to learn how to win. John Wooden didn't win right away, but all of his players have come back and said about John that he was one of the greatest influence. He was another father in their life or a father they never had. He helped them become successful in life. He was revered. And today, with the pressures to win, and I've had an AD tell me that, hey, I don't give a damn what you do with the players. You can do anything you want. I don't care what your philosophy is. I don't care. All I know is if they don't win this season, you are gone. And a lot of coaches go, I got to figure out how to win because I want my family and financial and everything else. This character stuff is really, it sounds cool. It's great.
Sure.
but I need to know what I got to do so that my team wins the SEC championship or whatever, because I don't have a long leash. I have a short leash. And so there's a lot of pressure. There's not a consensus that character is the most important asset. That is a kind of a lifelong journey. I have coaches, I do a lot of coaches training, have them start with the end of their life and what do they want to be remembered for? Why in the hell did they get into the coaching profession anyway? And then work backwards. So what does that mean if you're going to actually be in this extraordinary coach that helps them? Something as stupid for John Wooden was he taught them how to how to put their socks on,
Yeah.
and you go, what the hell does that have to do with anything? And it was because he was helping them so they wouldn't get blisters. And what he was teaching them was discipline. And he made them think, and his pyramid of success was a form of discipline that helped them understand there's more to basketball. He leveraged basketball to become extraordinary human beings, period. That was his goal. And as a coach, that's what I want you to get, this understanding that it's really an incredible opportunity. You have so much power in people's lives. Coaches are like they're like revered, and you can get right into that inner voice if you have a great, and also a terrible inner voice, you can destroy them. And so you have great power, and the more you leverage it for the right reason, not to make you famous, but to make them successful. They don't exist in your life to make you famous and to make you a lot of money. They exist in your life so that you can help them become more extraordinary successes in life, in the big game of life, as well as on your team. So that's kind of my philosophy.
Listening to you hear that as a couple flashes of some voices of the recruiting world that I've heard, where sometimes there's a tone in coaches that often I hear of, when you come here, blah blah blah, right? And when you come here, you're gonna get, when you come here, and then there's another group of coaches that recruit, and they always sound a little bit more like, when you leave here, you're going to be able, when you leave here, you're going to have, when you leave here. And you can almost hear the way sometimes they recruit and are doing things with this underlying, are they trying to be transformational half a decade with me, or trying to get me here so we can do their plan? And I think kids are getting
It's
really
truly
keen on
it's
it.
a great insight that you had there. One is interested in the game afterwards, and the other one is interested in what can you do for me right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's a way to put them both together, but you got to start what is most important and then work backwards. And then really it is, as a coach, what are you going to invest your energy in first and foremost? And follow your energy as a coach, and I know who the heck you are. And I'd love to follow how you speak to yourself, because how you speak to your players will have a massive influence on how they coach themselves, for better or for worse.
Powerful word. As we wind down here, two more questions. As you, with your years of experience and all your books, if you had to describe the philosophy you take to human performance, how would you describe that in short?
For me, the human system is designed in a miraculous way. And there's no quick fix to anything, really. It's really understanding that there is a person here that's totally unique, and you are going to do everything that you can to try to bring what you have learned to them. And you also have to listen and understand where they are coming from. And then you have to understand the field of forces they're operating in. They may have come from a miserable family, financially, all kinds of issues. They come from a culture that has been brutal. some come from very, very, elite families with financial means that are unlimited, and they have this entitlement kind of feeling. And, so you've got to get an understanding of where they are. And then you have to start somehow getting them to really want to articulate what matters most to them. One of the things in taking them, I take them almost always to the end of their life, and I have them create their tombstone, and then we work backwards. And it really, for me, perspective is everything. Now, if you don't have the right perspective, and if I don't have the right perspective, the more I know, the better off I can understand what needs to happen with you. But for me, we need to deal with the whole person. For me, it's the person first and the athlete second. I want to know who the heck you are as a person, and then we'll get into you as an athlete. And that's my approach.
In your years of work and all the great athletes and accolades and books and relationships, what has brought you the most joy and fulfillment in your work?
It's such an interesting thing. The greatest joy I've ever had, the gift of my three sons. That's for me. And one of them played professional tennis, and they all are athletes and all that. But they bring me the greatest joy, and my ability to be a father and to just, help them in any way I can. But the greatest joy that I have is the opportunity to help someone to get to another place, a better place in their life, and to leverage whatever it is that's going on right now, whether it's a business person, a CEO, or an elite athlete, special forces, hostage rescue team member. The greatest joy I have is helping them discover kind of assets and a path for them that maybe wasn't so clear. And that for me, I'm a forever learner. The last thing I'll be doing is still trying to figure out something that I never figured out. And I love when I can somehow get them to be more curious and to be asked questions and to really take charge of this magnificent neural processor between their ears and get all the gunk cleaned up, get all the crap that hasn't really helped them to clean it up. And when I see what happens and they start moving in those directions and they're freer than they've ever been, they have a sense of fulfillment and happiness, I don't believe anything gives me more joy than that.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your wisdom with us, and greatly appreciate everything you brought to this episode. 100%. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for those are great questions. You made me think in a lot of different ways, which I love. But thank you for the opportunity, and I hope somehow some value was created here. So thank you, TJ.